Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state is seeking to introduce into evidence what's been marked B for identification in the evidence of state.
Be a composite exhibit with both recorders.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No objection.
These and Bravo will be received as stated.
Can I have just a moment? No other questions.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Detective. So your interactions with Stephan Sterns, they were audio recorded, right?
Correct.
Okay, they weren't video recorded?
No.
Okay. And let's paint that picture. When you arrived on scene, you said that it was you and another detective present, right?
Correct.
Actually, I think it would have been 3 detectives, right? You, Acosta, and Hunt?
Hunt was already on scene. Detective Acosta and I arrived later.
Okay, so 3 detectives now on scene.
Correct.
Okay. And alongside those detectives, you said that they were patrol deputies, right?
Yes.
From the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
I don't recall if it was us or Kissimmee.
Okay. Were they wearing uniform?
Yes.
Did they have their badges?
Yes.
Did they have their guns?
Yes.
Did you have your gun?
I did.
Okay. And did you have your badge?
I did.
Okay. And when you arrive on scene, you said that you first went to talk to Detective Hunt, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then afterwards, at one point you start talking to Stephan Sterns, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this is outside of his house?
Correct.
Because he's not allowed to go inside his house at this point, right?
Not at this point. The house was not secured.
Right. And when you're talking about secured, that's for securing for searching the house, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the deputies are making sure that he's not going back inside his house, right?
Nobody's doing that.
Okay. So at what point, let me ask it this way, how did he get outside of the house?
I don't know. I wasn't there when he was outside.
To your understanding, how did he get outside?
I'm not sure.
The law enforcement have told him to?
I wasn't there.
Okay. And when you're talking with him, at no point did you say, you can go back inside, right?
I did not.
At no point did you say, you're free to leave, you can drive away, right?
I did not.
Actually, and you kept him from going inside his own vehicle, right?
I did.
Because that was being secured for searching too, right?
At that time, I just asked him to refrain from going back in his vehicle.
Okay, so you didn't even tell him it was for a search?
Not at that time. I wasn't sure what we had at the moment.
Okay. And then when you're talking with Mr. Sterns, you kind of give us a general overview that you said that he consented to searching his phone, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your specific question to him at first, going through the timeline, is do you mind if I look at your maps real quick, right?
Correct.
At no point did you say, do you mind if I dig through your entire phone at this point, right?
I did not.
Okay. And then when you get to the next question, it's do you mind if I take a picture of your history, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not take a picture of his lock screen?
No.
Not take a picture of his home screen?
No.
Not take a picture of his call history?
It was his history.
Not take a picture of his emails?
I did not.
Not take a picture of the entirety of his phone, just his history, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then when you get to the next thing, you say, is it okay, let me make sure this is right. Is it okay if I go in your settings real quick? I just want to see if you're logged onto your Google, right?
Yes.
And at that point, Mr. Sterns tells you that he is not logged into his Google, right?
Correct.
Okay. But then you keep pressing and then you say, is it okay if I check?
I asked. I didn't press.
Okay. You asked if it's okay you checked?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, it was just to check whether he was logged into his Google, right?
Correct.
Not going through the entirety of his phone.
Correct.
You never asked him, can I go through the entirety of your phone?
He was standing next to me while I was on his phone.
Okay, so it's your basis that he has to say no, you can just keep digging until he says stop?
Correct.
Really?
He was standing next to me and he saw what I was doing on his cell phone.
And did you ever ask him to go through the rest of your cell phone?
I did not.
Did you ever ask him to go into his call history?
I did not.
Did you ever ask him to go through his Google Drive on the phone, if it wasn't even wasn't?
I never looked at his Google Drive.
Okay. But you were looking at the rest of his phone, right?
I looked at his call history and his Google Maps.
Okay. Because you were trying to figure out that timeline, right?
Correct.
It's the only thing you were looking for at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever go into the photos on his phone?
Yes.
While he was there?
Yeah, he was standing next to me.
Okay. Did you ever ask him if you could go through his photos?
I did not.
Right. And when you're going through those photos, I mean, let's talk about that. How many of his photos did you look at?
I think it was maybe 2 or 3 of the day Madeline went missing.
just to be clear, you're not just looking at like the big grid, you start going into actual pictures?
I don't recall if I actually clicked on any of the pictures
Okay, so how do you know that you were just looking at 2 or 3 of the photos?
because it has dates on, like if you look at the grid, it shows dates for pictures.
Okay, and at any point, I'm just rephrase, at no point did you ask him to look at his photos?
I did not.
Then you go back to his Maps app at some point, right?
Correct.
And at that point, you're talking to him about the Snug Street address, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you never asked him if he could go back to the Maps app at that point, right?
I did not.
Okay. And just to be clear, nothing is visually recorded at this point.
Correct.
So when you say that you handed him his phone back, you never actually said, hey, here's your phone back, or anything of that.
I did. I said, here you go.
Here you go. Now, when you get the phone back from him, what do you say?
I said, can you please unlock your phone again?
Okay. And at that point, it was still you and Detective Acosta standing with him, right?
Correct.
Because you both are kind of tag teaming him, questioning him, right?
We're both talking to him.
Okay. Specifically, at what point did you say, here you go, when you handed him his phone back?
Right before I stepped away.
Okay. You sure here you go are your exact words?
I don't know if it was my exact words, but I did hand him the phone and I said, here you go. It's in the audio recording.
Okay. And then at this point, you said you got him to unlock his phone again, right?
Yes.
And that's when you started digging through his call history, right?
I'm not sure what I looked at when I had the phone back.
Well, you specifically said, I also noticed I was checking your call history. I noticed you don't have anything before this morning, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at no point did you ask if you can go into his call history?
I did not.
You took the phone from him, what time was that?
About 8, a little after 8?
8 at night?
Yes.
Okay. Just make sure we're painting that picture clear too. 8 o'clock at night you're speaking with him, right?
Correct.
It's about 50 to 60 degrees outside?
Correct.
Okay. And law enforcement's been standing around with Mr. Sterns outside?
He went to Jennifer's car after me and him spoke.
Okay, but before you and him spoke?
I can't answer that question. I wasn't there.
Okay, when you first showed up, where was he?
Outside.
Outside where?
I don't recall the exact location, but he was outside with Jennifer.
Right, so you know exactly where you walked, but not where he was?
Correct. I walked towards Detective Hunt.
Now, at this point, you collect Mr. Sterns' phone away from him for the final time that he has his hands on, right?
Correct.
And when you take that phone away from him, you don't ask him for his phone. You take it from him, right?
I already had the phone.
Oh, right. And then you told him specifically that at this point, we're keeping your phone.
Correct.
Okay. Didn't give him a choice.
I said, I'm going to keep your phone. We want to download your phone.
Excuse me, what was the exact phrasing that you just said there?
That we wanted to download the cell phone.
You said that during the first interview.
The second interview, not the first
Second.
one.
Talking about when you took the phone away from him, the first time, during the first interview. When did you tell him that you were going to download the phone?
The second time.
During the first interview, when did you tell him that you were going to download the
The second time I spoke to him, not the first time.
phone? You never said it the first time.
I did not.
Right. And then when you're talking with him that second time, you actually state to him, your exact words are,
Objection, improper.
response? I'll reverse it. When you speak with him, did you tell him that we had previously said that we were going to download the phone?
Yes.
And your interactions with him were recorded?
Correct.
And when you originally took the phone from Stephan Sterns, Mr. Sterns was concerned about staying in touch with his father, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's the point where you told him, well, you can just talk to him through Jen's phone, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at no point was he asked to consent to seizing his phone, right?
Correct.
At no point did you ever give him any form or anything to consent to seizing his phone?
I did not. Everything's audio recorded.
Okay. And at no point did you ever get a form from him consenting to downloading his phone?
I did not.
Okay. Because everything's audio recorded.
Correct.
Got it. And you collect the phone at 8 at night. It's about 1:30 in the morning you're talking to him again.
It's not. It's about midnight.
About midnight, okay. 4 hours then?
Just about.
Okay. You had the phone in your possession?
It was in my vehicle.
Okay. Ever apply for a search warrant at that point?
I did not.
Why not?
I didn't need, I didn't have like enough information yet as to what we were doing with the case.
Elaborate on that for me. What do you mean you didn't have enough information?
We knew that something didn't sound right, as like was speaking with him with like the timeline and things like that. But we weren't sure exactly what we were doing yet. I was waiting for my supervisor to contact me.
Okay. And when your supervisor contacted you, did he or she, excuse me? He. Did he tell you to get a warrant?
He did not.
Okay. Did he tell you to try and get that cell phone downloaded?
He did.
Okay. And how did he tell you to get that cell phone downloaded?
He didn't. He just said we wanted to get the phone downloaded, and that's when I asked Stephan if I had his permission to download the phone or if I needed to get a search warrant.
Right. You gave him the ultimatum at that point, right?
I asked him 2 questions.
Okay. So we can either get the phone or you can get a warrant, right?
Remember, this hearing is all about some horrifically graphic, horrible pictures found on the cell phone of Stephan Sterns. He's saying that it was not done properly, that it's not admissible. He wants it suppressed. We're going to have more of the motions hearing for him after the break. Stay tuned.
Is Karen Reed a killer girlfriend?
She's guilty.
Or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up?
Karen Reed was framed.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Defendant stated repeatedly, I hit him, I hit him.
She may end up taking the stand. Her first trial ended with a hung jury. They haven't proven anything.
Will a jury finally agree on a verdict?
We know who did it.
The Karen Reed murder retrial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Now to Florida, where we are watching the motion hearing for Stephan Sterns. He is accused of the death of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. But first, he will eventually be tried on sex crimes charges against the teenager. We're going to get you back into court now for more testimony from the detective. He is now facing cross-examination by the defense.
Now, at any point during these interactions, did you ever tell Mr. Sterns that he could have his phone back?
I told him his phone was going to be downloaded overnight and that he should probably get it in the morning.
Okay. And prior to the second interview, did you ever tell him he could have his phone back when you just took it from him?
I did not.
Okay. At any point, did you ever apply for a search warrant to download Mr. Sterns' phone?
I did not.
Did any other detective do that?
No.
Okay, because you're relying on that consent, right?
He gave us consent to search his phone.
Yes or no? Were you relying on the consent or did you get a warrant?
He gave me consent.
Now, when you're speaking with him, you became aware that Mr. Sterns had taken medication, right?
He said he had the night before.
Okay, and that was Ativan?
Yes.
And he told you why he took that medication, right?
Because he said he couldn't sleep and that he was very stressed and couldn't stop crying.
Right, and then he was also having panic attacks, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you knew that?
Yes, the night before.
Why your question? During the first interview?
Correct.
And the second?
Correct.
Got it. You aware what Ativan does?
I don't take Advance, so no.
Okay. You ever deal with anybody that taken Ativan?
No.
Objection relevance.
As to Mr. Sterns, he was wearing flip-flops at the time, right?
Correct.
Khaki shorts,
Yes.
thin hoodie.
Yes.
Told you he hadn't eaten all day, right?
Yes.
Okay. And was prevented from going inside of, sounds like his vehicle, right?
His vehicle, correct.
Okay. And again, couldn't go inside his own house. Or not his house, but the apartment.
Not at the time.
Okay. And at what time, rephrase, at 2:40 in the morning on February 28th, you submitted his phone to the Orange County Sheriff's Digital Forensics Unit, right?
I did not.
You did not?
No.
Who did?
Detective Acosta.
Okay, so Detective Acosta was now in charge of the phone?
Yes.
Okay. You guys ride in the car together?
We did not.
You said the phone was stored in your car at some point, right?
When we were talking, or when we were looking at the video, yes, it was in my vehicle.
Okay. When did you turn over the phone to Detective Acosta?
At the end of the night, after we secured the residence, which was around 1 in the morning, Detective Acosta was waiting for the tow truck for Stephan's Lincoln, and that's when I handed him the phone because he was going to Central Operations, and I was not.
Okay. Was that the last time that you had involvement with the phone?
Yes.
Okay. So after the handoff, nothing else, just to be clear.
In reference to, like, if I ever looked at the phone again?
Yeah.
Sure, I think it was like 2 days later.
Okay. So at that point, the phone's still in your law enforcement's possession?
Yes.
To confirm?
Of course.
No further questions.
Thank you. Redirect.
Defense mentioned that there were other law enforcement personnel that were at the apartment complex. During your interactions with Mr. Sterns, who was in the immediate area?
Just myself and Detective Acosta. Everybody was kind of just hanging out in the area.
Detective Tagler, I've got a question. When you initially interacted with Mr. Sterns, you indicated that you were going to take a photo of his history. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you take a photo of his history?
Yes.
Was that on your agency cell phone?
Yes.
Any follow-up questions based on that question? State.
No, Your Honor.
Defense? No. Thank you. Will the detective step down?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is Detective Tagler excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Detective Tagler,
Thank
step
you.
down. Thank you. This is up.
I'd like to welcome now trial attorney jury consultant Wendy Patrick. Wendy, of course, thank you for being on with us this Friday. You know, this is a hard case, and here's why. Because enough details were released, of course, pictures not released, but details about what was in the photos found on Stephan Sterns' phone to know that it's described as really graphic, horribly sexually inappropriate photos of a 13-year-old Madeline Soto. So when you know that, you think, well, of course these pictures need to come in because that's a crime in and of itself in child porn. But the reality is it could be an illegal search and seizure, rather, if he did not give them permission to access everything on his phone. And he's arguing he didn't. He's saying, I thought you were just going to look at Google Maps. That's all I said you could do.
But he has to bolster that argument with evidence. It's sort of like asking for a jury instruction that you'd love to have, but you can't support. And that's what this hearing was about. It's about whether or not there was undue influence. Did they put him in such a coercive situation, exploiting the fact that he was having a panic attack or had Ativan the night before, that they overcame his will? That is a tough hill to climb. That's especially a tough hill to climb when you have a no-nonsense witness like this one that's basically just laying it out. Here's what I did. Here's what I didn't do. I was standing right next to him. He was watching everything I was doing on the phone, and he gave consent. If you have consent, you're good. Now, what the defense is arguing is, well, there may have been consent to some type of a search, but not consent to the completeness of the search, which is why they just went through all these questions regarding the scope of the consent. Now, it is also true that in some cases, law enforcement would say, well, let's also get a warrant, belt and suspenders. Let's make sure we cover all our bases. But if there's clear consent, it's not required.
And that is the rub. Was there consent or not? That's why the testimony is being presented. But as you listen and think, was there consent or not, you kind of think logically, knowing what is allegedly in all of these photos, so graphic can't be seen. Then you think, why would he have given consent to see that? It just doesn't seem like it makes common sense that anyone would agree, hand over that kind of evidence that would then be used against him.
Well, that's an argument that really is belied by the evidence here. And you and I have seen many cases where you think, here's somebody that's stopped in a car and has, a car full of drugs or a phone full of evidence. Why would they give consent? And, it's hard to get into the mind of somebody that did that. But the bottom line is, did it happen? And was it limited to whatever he consented to? Or did it go beyond the scope? And given what this detective just testified to, combined, Ashley, and this is important, combined with the fact that he's watching what she's doing. So you don't just have, I'm going to hand it over and I'm going to, give verbal consent. Remember, it's all audio recorded as they went back and forth during that cross-examination. But he's also watching to see what she's actually going to be looking at. And then the phone apparently gets handed back again. That's why I say it's a tough hill to climb. Not that there aren't plenty of cases where a judge may decide the search exceeded the scope of the consent, but the question here is, would this be one of those cases, given that not only did he say it verbally, but he's apparently watching what she's looking at?
Yeah. I mean, it's just a terrible case. And so when you are defending a person like this, let's just talk about constitutional rights. And the reality is, no matter how horrible those pictures are, no matter how heinous it is what he allegedly did before he killed her, allegedly, it still is something that you have to protect the constitutional rights of everyone ever accused of a crime. And the fact of the matter is, without a warrant or without valid consent, you can't just look at people's things, including pictures on their phone.
That's exactly right. And I'm so glad you brought that up. So many times we look at the enormity of an offense and how graphic it is and how, just horrendous some of these murder cases are. But Lady Justice is blind, and the police, prosecutors, nobody can invade privacy without the proper due process concerns being addressed, no matter what anybody is charged with and no matter what the facts are. And that's why it's so important that judges everywhere, and you know this from being on the bench, do everything they need to do to ensure the integrity of the evidence that's going to be relied on in the case. That's why we have hearings like this all of the time. If there's even an inkling that we need to make a record that due process concerns were afforded and were complied with. And that's what just happened here.